But again, how we can structure the business. There are different factors affecting on how we should structure a certain business or a specific organization, such as the size of the business or the size of the organization, the geographic dispersion, the range of business undertaking, the task specialization requirements, the general nature of the business itself, the ability to leverage communication and interactive technology, and also the best way to connect with customers. All these factors will affect how to design the best organizational structure for this specific business. And as I said before, organizational structures are not static. No, they are living structures. So whenever we find the need to add more units or restructure the whole business, we can do this. Throughout the life cycle of the organization, we might have periods of growth or organizational contraction. In these times, we might face specific challenges that dictate that we have to do some changes to the framework of the organization. So we need to customize the structure according to the current situation of the organization, taking into consideration strategic intent. And we need to maintain our competitive advantage all the time. That's why we have to build the organizational structure using building blocks. We recognize and study the current structure and see what are the internal or external or both factors that will affect the business structure in general. And we have 3 building blocks that will help us to design the best organizational structure: customer intimacy, work efficiency, and degree of departmentalization. Customer intimacy refers to how we will interact with our customers, how we will build connectivity with the business and the customer base to provide service, to support, and to have this level of connectivity with the client that enhances our competitive advantage. Usually, as the organization grows, we tend to focus on the functional efficiency, and we deviate a little bit from the value proposition. And value proposition mainly is how we will provide value to our customers. And that's why we deviate or neglect a little bit the customer intimacy. We need to have a organizational structure that supports the mechanisms for interactions and touch points with our customers. We take into consideration the design of these touch points in a more effective way to keep our connectivity with our clients. For example, if we will use a website to interact with our customers, this website should be designed to maximize the value of interacting with the customers as a repeat business. So frequent purchase, the per interaction expenditure by the customer. And we erase the barriers between our business and our customers, at the same time remaining competitive and remaining ahead of our competition. Then we have to think of work efficiencies. Work efficiencies are the need for the organization to analyze whether it's the type, the number, the responsibilities of different positions within the organization, and align these positions with these specifications to different tasks required to perform the work, to support different functions that support our interaction with our customers. For example, the marketing, distribution, sales, design and development of products and services. And we perform analytical assessments. And personally, I worked in consulting services providing business process re-engineering. So we redesign different business processes to improve how we will perform the work and increase the efficiency of the functionalities of this unit. We might assess policies and procedures. We might assess workflow. We might perform a technological assessment to see how we can include technological advancements that will increase work efficiency. We apply different protocols like quality assurance protocols, for example. So we evaluate work efficiency to make sure that the organization or the business is able to compete in the market. The third block is departmentalization, and this refers to dividing the organization into work units, and these work units are defined functional areas. And when we do this, we take into consideration the certain expertise or skill sets that's needed to perform different tasks. And we have to link the degree of departmentalization to the degree of efficiency and effectiveness of the work outcome. The more we group employees into functional areas, the more we centralize the decision-making process. And this might create synergy within and autonomy within this business unit. Usually in functional structures that as we talked previously, there is a high degree of departmentalization, and we will find that these functional areas works as centers for certain decision-making elements. So we might have finance, engineering, HR, marketing. So we have the ability to share tasks, to scale, and to manage these functions easily. And this leads to a higher degree of control. However, a huge disadvantage of departmentalization is having these units working as silos, as separate entities from each other. So we find that decisions made within these units are made in isolation from other departments, and this might lead to not taking certain organizational needs into consideration, not having a unified vision, and losing the big picture. And also a disconnect between internal or external stakeholders. Organizational structure goes hand in hand with organizational culture and work environment. The organizational structure is like the backbone of the organization. We can see culture as the conscious and the heart of the organization. Culture dictates how the employees or individuals within the organization will behave to meet internal and external changes and demands. How they will react to challenges, whether it's internal or external. The organizational structure gives us the framework to manage the day-to-day interactions, processes, activities, while the organizational culture reflects the behavioral aspect of these interactions. For example, the values, the shared values, the attitudes, the interactive relationships, the morale, the norms. So when we develop a framework for the organization, we use the organizational structure and the culture to generate or to create the work environment that best suits the strategic intent of the organization. And right now, especially in Canada, we have certain factors that's affecting the work cultures, like immigration, diversity, interconnectivity of the global market. And this creates a sort of cultural diversity that impacts the way individuals interact, how different employees or individuals perceive authority, and how they come to solutions to different problems, how they negotiate, how they face challenges. And here we have to talk about the Hofstede model, culture model. I love this model, and I remember when I was studying for my MBA in organizational development, we dedicated much time to this model. This model includes 6 dimensions: individualism, power distance, masculinity, uncertainty avoidance, long-term orientation, and indulgence. And although this model assesses the national culture, we find that the national culture affects the internal cultures or internal organizational cultures within businesses and organizations. That's why when we have different backgrounds, this will affect on our business, because different individuals see these dimensions, these 6 dimensions, in a different way. For example, I included here a comparison between Germany and India in these six dimensions. See here the power distance. In Germany, we have very, very low power distance. In India, we have very, very high power distance. So when we have a team that include both nationalities or both ethnic backgrounds, we might have some friction when it comes to the power distance, how this individual perceive power and respond to the position power compared to other team members or other individual in the organization. So as managers, we need to think of the organizational culture and include these elements of the national culture to see how employees interact with each other, and also how they interact with the external stakeholders. So culture influences certain zones: how employees interact, the control protocols, emphasis on competitiveness, and risk allowance. So while we are designing our organizational framework, we have to define behavioral norms and boundaries around the 4 elements or the 4 zones I mentioned. The first zone, employee interaction, and it refers to the level and style of interaction that occurs among employees and among work units and their management teams. It defines the participatory nature of the work environment, a sense of teamwork, collaboration, a commitment of the management team towards supporting and developing employee skills and capabilities. The second zone is risk allowance, and it refers to the degree of entrepreneurship that's embedded into the organization, the extent to which the environment allows risk-taking and encouraging risk-taking, flexibility in decision-making, supporting innovation, sharing innovative ideas, rewarding creativity. We also have the third zone, control protocols. These protocols refers to the rigidity or flexibility, whether we have a rigid or flexible application and adherence to rules, policies, procedures within the organization. So we adhere to order, uniformity, and this is embedded within the organization. The overarching emphasis on work conducted defined by efficiency and effectiveness protocol. We have systems like financial systems, quality control, reward system, and all these systems direct operational performance. And the fourth zone is competitive emphasis. And this refers to the extent to which the organization rewards goal achievement, emphasizing competitiveness, whether it's internal or external. How we define the success. Do we define success based on market superiority? How passionate we are in communicating to our employees ideas and news relating to organizational success and achievement of performance benchmarks. How we represent this competitiveness, maybe using logos, maybe using slogans and mottos, maybe have a specific visual representation or certain initiatives. And we use these 4 zones as our culture framework to align the organization and the employees and our talent to the vision and mission. So when we have such a positive work culture and work environment, we will have more connectivity between employees and between our internal and external stakeholders. We will have smoother flow of information, whether it's horizontally or vertically, whether it's within the same business unit or within different units. And we will use this cultural framework to set expectations and communicate these expectations to our employees. Remember when we said the structure is the skeleton and the culture is the heart or the conscious? We still need the brain, and management approach is the brain. How we will control the decision-making authority and the decision-making process. So the effective managerial approach will allow managers to build a culture and a structure to support relationships within the organization. And this managerial approach will enable us to integrate different teams and align the goals and objectives of these teams to the goals and objectives of the organization. Our managerial approach will enable us to foster excellence, whether functional or technical. It will enable us to create a collaborative environment, improve our products, improve our services, of course, improve our operations and enhance the communication between different stakeholders. To design our managerial approach, we need to assess the organization regularly, review the organizational structure, and also review the organizational culture, and set some strategies and adjustments to successfully execute the strategy, and also to intervene to change or redirect the organization if needed. There are key criteria that should be included in our management approach: hierarchy requirements, nature of work, coordination of the work efforts, decision-making control, and span of control. So our managerial approach should include decisions on the degree of centralization or decentralization of managerial decision making authority and responsibility, the extent of responsibility that various managerial positions will oversee or take. This is the span of control, the coordination of work effort that is considered most efficient to effectively direct the operational and market support processes. And of course, the nature of the specific tasks that individuals have to do or accomplish on a day-to-day basis. And the managerial hierarchy, which refers to the levels of management that we think it's necessarily to have these levels to effectively manage the organization. The different ranks of managerial positions, the different layers of management within the chain of command, and how complex the organization is, and the type of organizational structure. Is it geographical? Is it functional? Is it a matrix? And also, how many subordinates under each management level? How this will affect cross-functional projects, job rotation, outsourcing decisions, and also the complexity of tasks mandates the managerial approach that we think it's best suited to the organization. How we will coordinate work efforts, so how we will allocate personnel, how we will motivate them. Of course, we heard about restructuring, but sometimes it's not mentioned as restructuring. Sometimes it's mergers, acquisitions, downsizing, expanding, going to new markets. So these changes that's happening to the organization, whether we are growing or contracting, might dictate some sort of a restructuring. So we have a need to change the organization business systems or a desired position in the marketplace, or to make fundamental changes to the way the organization does business. And usually restructuring happens when there is a disconnect between the organization and the strategic intent. And this might happen because of external or internal factors. For example, we need to reduce costs. There are higher degree of competitiveness in the market, or our customers or customer segments are changing, or the technology that we are using is obsolete, or there are new technologies in the market. But it's not a reactive decision in all cases. Sometimes there is a tendency in organizations to dictate restructuring on itself to adjust and create more connectivity between the organization and the market. For example, when we have or designing for significant growth, when we are launching new products or services, or when we are expanding into new markets. So we perform this organizational restructuring to increase the value of the organization, the sustainability of the organization in the market, the health of the organization. So when we doing this restructuring, we have to perform a process to assess and organize three elements: structural design, execution, and communication. In structural design, we think of the changes or adjustments to the organizational structure that are required to successfully achieve the desired objectives. How this will impact the culture, how this will impact the chain of command, how this will impact the decision-making process. Once we finish this phase or this element, structural design, we enter the second element or the second phase. How will we execute the restructuring process? What are the phases that we will implement? The degree of change. Is it a subtle change or a drastic change? Well, during this execution of the restructuring, the operations will be disrupted. How this disruption will affect the productivity of the business. The third element or the third phase is communication. I don't see this as a third phase. It's an element that's going throughout the process of restructuring. We have to design a communication plan. We have to decide on how and what we will communicate to different stakeholders within our business. How we will make sure that all the personnel or the employees will understand the goals of this restructuring. How this restructuring process will affect the morale of the employees. Sometimes we need to design training courses and to design communication events to communicate certain messages to our employees. And restructuring is a transformation process, and we will not be able to assess the success of any restructuring process unless the results come into fruition. This week we talked about designing business systems, we talked about organizational structure, we talked about organizational culture, and we talked about managerial approach. See you next week.